Cool. We are recording. So then I'm going to share my screen. Cool. Hopefully there'll be a chorus of yes and answer the question. Can you see exorcism on my screen at the moment?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Not quite the chorus, but fine. I'll settle with the one. Okay, so the first thing to do is just to go onto exorcism.io and sign up. Now, everyone now should have a GitHub account, so you can just, with most of these things, just authenticate yourself using this GitHub button. So authenticate yourselves with GitHub. Feel free to follow along, by the way, if you want to, in your own browser. Go to exorcism.io and sign up with GitHub. Once you're signed up, I'm going to log in with GitHub because I've already signed up. You should be taken to some page looking like this. Now, the way that exorcism works, there are two versions of this. There's like the student version, the mentee version, and then there's the mentor version. The ratio of mentors to mentees is like quite significant. So I would always advise you, rather than go down the mentor route or the mentoring route, just go and go into practice mode. What that means is, let's say we're going to do JavaScript. You just want to make sure that you're in practice mode. So this means you have access to most of the challenges. You can see that's like the little unlock symbol. Whereas the mentor mode means you have to like wait to get feedback from mentors and like improve your solutions as you go through. But we don't need to worry about that because I'm here. But feel free to do that as well if you'd like. But the expectation is we'll do it in practice mode together. So this is where we all want to be. Let's take a random one. Let's go this one. And there's a few setup things we need to do. So look at this.
Sorry, Ed, just 1 second. Should we go to the mentored mode or the practice mode? I could not get it exactly.
A practice mode.
Practice mode, all right. Thank you.
No worries. Cool. Okay, so practice mode, and then we're not gonna worry about the instruction just yet in the setup. We're going to do that in a second. But we're going to just go back to the walkthrough. So I'm going to open this up in a new tab and have a look at how we set ourselves up. So at the top here, you can see we're going to use the CLI walkthrough. CLI stands for the command line interface. And that's essentially your terminal window, the command prompt, git bash, PowerShell, whatever you're using at the moment to access your command line. So we're going to be doing it and try where possible always just to use your command line interface at the moment to do most things on your computer. Just try and like get into the habit of using it for everything. Some things will likely be easier in your file explorer or in Finder, but try where possible just to use your command line. Cool. Okay. So choose which operating system you use. I'll demonstrate on Mac because I'm on my Mac at the moment. I might, if you want it, I might, record another video just for using the Windows setup. I'll switch to my Windows laptop. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. The idea is we just need to install exorcism. So it gives us like a nice little like check. Yes, I'm comfortable because we're all budding software engineers, so we should be able to use our command line. So yes, and this is what we need to do. So if you haven't yet, if you're on Mac, this doesn't apply if you're on Windows. Just choose the other option and go through the Windows installation process. To install exorcism, we're just going to Homebrew as a package manager. So Homebrew is an application, just like most things are, that allows us or manages installation processes of different other applications. So we always use the command brew to access Homebrew from a Mac. And it always tells you to update it itself first before you install anything. So let's go through this. Brew update, just double check. doing a few things in the background.
So the Brew is not by default installed in Mac. You have to install Brew.
Homebrew, yes.
Okay.
If you're on a Mac, you have to make sure you go through the Homebrew setup.
Okay, all right.
So Homebrew setup. So you go to this page, and I'll whack this in the Discord channel, and just copy this and whack it into your command line, all right?
Right.
So let's put that in your Discord. This is simply for Mac, all right?
Yeah.
Cool. Once that's done, then you can make sure it's updated. Cool. Anything that's needed to be updated, it looks through all the current applications or small libraries of code and just makes any updates as needed. It's essentially trying to manage your libraries of code that are needed, and all these random names. Mostly don't worry about them. You don't need to worry about it. But regularly run brew update. Cool. The next step is to brew install exorcism. I've already installed it. Cool. So that after you've installed it, there should be. Let's go through the reinstallation process just to see what it does. Cool. So you'll get something like this where it taps into like another repository by Homebrew to get like a package of code or a bunch of packages of code and brings it down to your laptop. So now it's all installed. We can check the installed version and go exorcism version. So this will be the same when you're on Windows, just to double check. Cool. So we have now a version of exorcism. Yes, I have. Congratulations, you've now installed it. Our next step is to configure the command line interface. So let's go to this step. In order to configure the exorcism command interface, paste the following text into your terminal. Cool. All right, let's do that. We trust you. Okay, you've configured the command line client. It says that the configuration directory, this over here, is in my home directory in the dot folder .config. Excellent. So we can have a look at this. Let's have a look. I'm already in my home directory, so I should just be able to go config and have a look. Yep, it's there. Nice. And we could probably explore it if you wanted to and have a look at what's there. There's nothing much in it at the moment. There's one file that has I can't do ANL with a cat clearly. Okay, so it just has information about the API URL, this token that it asks me to have, probably for authentication, like you've done with your SSH key. This is just a simpler version one when we ask things from exorcism, and it gives me my home directory. So it says it has a folder called exorcism on my home directory. So let's have a look. I see it at the moment, so let's have a look. Have you configured the exorcism? Yes, I have. Cool. You have everything set up. Start learning by choosing an exercise from your dashboard. All right, I clicked on this random one over here. Give a second. Okay, so I've done this begin walkthrough step. And then it says over here, download. So I'm going to copy this and download it. Exorcism download, and then it has specifically an option for exercise and a track. Cool, downloaded to users, Edward, exorcism, JavaScript, gigasecond. Okay, so let's go find that now. CE into exorcism. Let's have a look here. We're in JavaScript. Let's go into that folder. Gigasecond. All right, I'm just going to use my editor to open up this folder and see what's inside of it. So whatever editor you're using, open it up. I grew up using, I guess, Atom when it first came out, when I was learning to code. So when for you, I would probably encourage you to use VS Code or choose any editor that you like to use. But once it's there, we can open it up. So let's have a look together what's in here. Okay, so there's a bunch of files and folders that have come with this, and we'll have a look through them in a second, what we need to pay attention to, what we don't. Okay, let's go back to the exercises here. Okay, so we've downloaded it, and then it says now solve it, and then we submit. So those are the three steps. We just download an exercise, we solve it, and we'll talk about what that means in a second, and then when we're done, we submit. So we'll come back to submit in a second. Okay, so we've done the exorcism side of things and set up. Now go through the set of instructions for JavaScript. So some of you, probably most of you, haven't yet set up JavaScript. So let's make sure we've done that. So I'm going to open up this one.
Is gigasecond the individual problem?
One more time.
What is gigasecond?
Just a practice. Let's go back one. So I just chose this exercise from
right. Okay.
So there was a bunch. I just clicked on the one that was in the middle. Yeah. You can start with any of these ones. I would start with an easy one to begin with, and I just chose this one because I like the sound of it. Or so far so good, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any thoughts or questions? Want me to repeat anything or go back over anything? Always happy to.
All good.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we set up our exorcism, so we've installed it, so we can do things with it, but we haven't yet set up JavaScript. Now, a little segue here. There are two kinds of JavaScript: JavaScript that runs in your browser, JavaScript that runs on your machine. All right. The JavaScript that we're going to be using is Node.js. Right. This is the one that runs on your laptop, not in your browser. Every browser comes with its own runtime, its own environment to be able to use and create a language. That's not the version of JavaScript that we're using, but the syntax is almost identical. So but this is one of the reasons why we need to install it, because we can install the Node.js version of JavaScript. As an example, in your browser, you can always right-click the page and inspect it. We'll come back to a lot of this when we come to sort of front-end development and whatnot. In the console tab, this is a JavaScript environment, so I can actually write JavaScript here and get it to do things. So your browser has a runtime environment for JavaScript, but it's not the JavaScript that we're using. And we're going to be using Node.js, which means we actually have to install it. A language is comprised of a bunch of files and folders because it has to do things. It has to look at the text that you write and figure out how to make it into keywords, variables, and integers and things like that. So there's a bunch of files that we need for any new programming language or any version of a programming language. So we need to go through an installation process, grab a bunch of files and folders from somewhere and bring them down to your laptop so we can use a programming language. So let's have a look at how do we do this. If you're on, wherever you are on, you can just go to the Node.js website and install it yourself. All right. Do the one on the left. I'm the moment clearly it's recognized I'm on Mac OS. So choose whichever one is for your operating system, whether it's Windows or Mac, and go with the stable version. If you're on Mac, you can also just use Brew to install it. You can go Brew install Node, and that might be even simpler. Usually is. Excuse me. So once you've installed it, you should be able to check. So imagine you're on Mac. You can do something like brew install node. That would hopefully sort everything else for you, or you can go to the website and install it yourself. If you install it yourself, you'll have to always go back to the website to install new versions, right? Or install a package that manages it for you. So once you've installed it, does that make sense with everyone so far? Install, go to the, let me just throw this into, I'm sure you can find it yourself, but I'll just double check and give it here for everyone. We'll come back to the distinction of JavaScript in the browser and JavaScript on your machine that we're installing right now when we come back to front-end development. Okay, so we need to verify our installation. So you'll know it's correct once you can go to your command line and just check the version. At the moment, I have version 15.8. I imagine you'll be something 15 point something. So there are more instructions here if you need, but I would try and keep it very simple and just install the use an installer if you're on Windows or use Homebrew if you're on Mac. Anything else? That's everything's fine. Cool. So once we've installed Node.js, we've set up our language, we set up Exism, and then it says requirements. Please change directory into the existing directory before running all below commands. Okay, so the first step we need to do is install dependencies. So let's do that. Where am I? I'm in, so we need to go into this exercise. That's what it says. Please change into the exercise directory. Cool, what's in here? A bunch of files and folders. Now let's see this in my editor. A question to everyone. What's your, let's not question to everyone, let's pick on people in a nice way. Josh, you're up.
Yes.
How you doing?
All right, thank you.
Good to hear. When you hear or when you read the word dependencies for a project, what's your best educated guess of what that means?
Ooh, okay.
In context, it says install assignment dependencies. What do you want? I'm not looking for a correct answer. I'm just looking for what do you understand when you hear this, when you read this?
So my guess would be that these are elements that you need in that folder to do the exercise.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a really nice first sort of like foundation for us to think about this. Lewis, can you add to that? Josh says it's like just things that we need for the assignment. Can we expand on this? You're on mute, by the way. Yeah, sorry.
No, I don't think so.
Cool. What about, let's try one more. Petra, what about you?
I would say all the elements or additional files which are needed for the project or for the task to execute properly.
Cool.
Something
Yeah,
along those lines.
The thing I think I was looking for is like a little bit more detail on the elements that both Josh and Lewis were saying. And Petra, I think you hit it on the head there, which is just files and folders. I'll share my screen just so you don't all have to jump onto it. I'm going to go to here. I want to just give a visual representation of what this is. So if we think of a project that the exercise that we just are working on called gigasecond, and I'm going to represent this with a box. This is my project gigasecond. I'm going to zoom in here just so you can also see a little bit more clearly. If you want to go look at it yourself in your browser, just jump onto the mirror board yourself, or you can just look at my screen. So for every project, you need to have a list of dependencies. No matter what language you're in, every language has a way that allows for a project to list out its dependencies. Now, the name, the trick's in the name here. A dependency is something that the project relies on. It's usually an external library of code. A library of code just means a bunch of files and folders that someone has put together to do usually a specific thing. So you might have, and the idea is reuse. The idea of modularity means that you don't want to always constantly create everything from scratch every single time. So the community of a programming language has a bunch of already made libraries of code to do specific tasks. So every project has a list of dependencies in order to accelerate some development. And so every project exists with a bunch of other projects that it requires. So sometimes it's easy to forget that the code that you're writing, the project that you're writing, is usually only like 10% of the actual project, because a lot of the code is already pre-written and you're just requiring in these modules or these dependencies. And so when both James and Lewis and Petra said like all the elements that it needs, we're just going to fetch like other people's libraries of code to be able to make our project work. And we just pull them into our project. And the way that we get this information is by listing out the dependencies. So if we go back to this project, in JavaScript, in Node.js specifically, we use this file, the package.json, to enumerate which dependencies we need. So here's the list of dependencies that this project needs. We don't need to know anything more apart from this high-level idea of projects need dependencies and just giving a picture in our heads about what are dependencies, other files and folders that we need. It's probably all self-explanatory. It's quite intuitive, but every project consists of lots of other projects, and it's a good thing to remember. So every project, you should think about making sure that you're installing all the required dependencies, and that's what this step means. When it says, please install dependencies. So let's go ahead and install our dependencies. So we're going to use this npm command. This is the Node package manager that we're using. So we've just installed our Node.js as a language. It comes with a package manager. So let's do npm install. And this looks at that file that we looked at and just says, okay, looks through it and finds all the libraries of code either locally on your machine or goes and makes requests to another server to grab those libraries of code. So when you see this progress bar, that's what it's doing. It's checking all the dependencies and trying to make sure it finds the right versions. Issues a bunch of warning of things that are deprecated, but we don't need to worry about warnings. You can see it added a whopping 922 packages, about 12 seconds. Some of them can be really small packages. And this is a feature of how the Node.js ecosystem works that has so many packages, but I won't talk about that for now. Okay, so we've gone through this step, install dependencies, and then it says making the test suite pass, execute the test with npm test. Cool. All right, so let's do that. Npm test. Cool. Okay, so welcome to your first verbose error message, folks. This is all useful stuff that we're seeing here. Let's go through it together. So first of all, up here, it says the command that it ran. So it's using Jest. Jest is a test framework. We'll forget about it for now. We'll come back to this in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. Up here says like the outcome of the test at the top. So it failed, boo, but we'll make it work. And this is the spec file, and we'll have a look at that. This is like an output of the test names and which ones failed and which ones were skipped, and hopefully at some point which ones are passed. And we want them all to be green. This is, again, the text of the test that failed. So this is like the summary, and this is like now the detail here. And this is like the snapshot of where in your code the error message or the failure happened. This is the line number in the file. You can see it's 7. So this is in the gigasecond.js file, line 7, and it's usually colon 9, character 9. And then this is again a numeric summary. So this is the error message that we're going to get, and we're going to go and have a look at this in a second. So I'll just we'll get this one test to pass together, and then it probably means actually solving it, but that's fine. And then we'll submit it, and then we'll go through questions. All right. So far, so good. I guess we'll be following.
You have to be in a particular directory when you do npm test.
Yeah, you should make sure you're in the exercise directory, right?
That's just exorcism JavaScript, and then in my case, hello world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
With the packages .json file, does that have to be in the root, or can it be anywhere?
Can you repeat that question, Zach?
So with the package.json file, does that have to be in the root directory, or can that be anywhere?
That it should always be in the root directory of the project that you're working in. Yeah.
All right.
Because that's where you should always be running most of these commands in your root directory, and it looks for it at that level. Good question. More questions, more thoughts? Okay. So in this directory, before we go back and solve this together, you can see that this node modules folder is huge. This is where all your dependencies got installed to. And you can see there are loads, and this is a tiny little exercise, right? It's huge. It installed 922 packages. Some of them are really, really small, all right? And Node.js exists in this ecosystem of really small dependent packages. It makes things a lot simpler to just like develop. But it usually gets quite big, so please don't check this into version control. Make sure it's if you're creating your own projects, always add node modules to your ignore file for Git. I'm sure some of you will forget that. That's fine. Okay, what else is in here? We have a config file for exorcism. It's got a bunch of information about this exercise. We can ignore this folder. We can ignore this folder. ESLint is a linter, so this looks at like your style, like spacing between things, commas, brackets, and things like that. This is we can forget about this one. We can forget about this one. The only ones that we really need to pay attention to are our source code file and our test code file. So this is the gigasecond.js and the gigasecond.spec.js. Those are the only two things we need to pay attention to. Okay. And just pausing here for thoughts and questions.
I have one question about the node modules folder. So obviously we're doing npm install on every practice question.
Yep, correct.
Well, is it possible is it just okay that it's probably installing things again for each different practice directory?
Yeah, that's a really great insight.
Pop that into the JavaScript directory and it can be used throughout all of them.
Yeah. So different programming languages manage dependencies in different ways. Node.js practices like a very contained per project version of this, and then it bubbles up. So it looks in successive layers, see if something has already been installed locally, and then it will copy it or point to it. But it will try and keep everything very contained. So you might end up having lots of folders with node module with their own node module folders, and that's expected. That's normal. But at some point, you can just delete the things that you don't need. But I don't think you'll worry about space just yet. But if it does come to that, let's revisit it. All right. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry, I only have like 4 people's faces on my screen at the moment, so I can't see. Yeah, different languages manage it in different ways. So sometimes this problem is the pros and cons to package management. Okay, what are we doing? We tried npm test. We're looking at this. Let's go and actually solve this then. Yeah. Okay, what is a spec file? No, let's do this. What is a spec file? Okay, so I don't really want you to worry about anything in this file as it currently stands, right? The only thing to pay attention to is the expectation. So when you read through this, we're calling a gigasecond function, and this is where it's written. So I assume when you work on this by yourself or in pairs this afternoon over the next few days, there's going to be lots that's new. Probably every word of this is going to be new. What does export do? What does const do? What does this do? What is this notation? And I don't want you to worry about it specifically. All right. I just want you to know that it's probably going to be new to everyone, and just work your way through it, look things up, and it will become clearer. And anything that we need to go over this afternoon, or regroup this afternoon, I can demonstrate some things. But just know that it's expected to be new. All right, I don't expect you to be able to do this in 5 minutes. So when you get there, I want you to be able to read that we're calling a gigasecond function, and then we're expecting it to equal something. And the expected output. So the input is a date, and the output is also a date. And so I guess it says to remove this, we can remove this. And the input is a date, and we have to return a date. And we can tell that probably by the instructions, as well as just by looking at this test. All right, we take in a date object, and we output a date object. And the thing is, we have to do is add a gigasecond to the date. What is a gigasecond? I don't know, it's probably like a huge number, right? I'll look at the instructions again. A gigasecond is 10 to the 9 seconds. So given any date, to determine the moment that would be after a gigasecond has passed. Okay, cool. So the first thing that I would do in this question is to understand, first of all, what format is a date? What are dates? So I'm going to go back to my terminal and probably open up a new window and just type in node. This gives you an environment to play around with. So this gives you a way to experiment and just try things out. We call this kind of application a REPL, R-E-P-L. Stands for read, evaluate, print, and then loop. It's the 4 things that happens. It reads what you type, 1 + 1, it evaluates it, it returns it to you, and then waits for more input. So REPLs are quite useful just to practice and get feedback about what you're doing. So what I want to do is have a look at how to use a date. So that's the format that it's in, but I want you to add seconds to it. So I need to find a way to convert this into, I guess, a number of seconds. So if I go back to here, if I need to add a gigasecond to the date, I guess the first thing I want to do is convert the date to seconds, add a gigasecond, and then convert it back to date. I guess this is what I would do for this question. Anything in terms of just like the simple steps, does that kind of make sense to everyone? I don't want to worry about too much about the actual code for this, but just like digesting the task at hand and then convert it into some steps.
Sorry, what's the spec file? Could you just go over that again?
Yeah, they put it side by side. So when you run npm test, what I just did here, it just looks at this file and runs all of the individual tests. At the moment, there's actually only one active because everything else has got this little X in front of it. That means it's pending. So at the moment, I'm only focusing on this one, and because that's the only one that's running. And I've understood that it takes in an argument as a date. This is this new date thing, and then it expects to equal a date. So I know that the input's a date and the output's a date. So I noted that down as comments. And then I had to think about, well, how do I do the thing that I meant to be doing, which is add a gigasecond.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try and convert the date into seconds, add a big number to it, and then convert it back to a date. Yeah. And again, I'm only trying to look for high-level thoughts or questions. We don't need to worry too much about some of these specifics, because when you go out and do this yourself, you'll go through every word and try and research things, right? So it should be fun. Okay, so let's have a look to do this. So the input is a date. I'm going to give the argument a name. And I want to find out how in JavaScript I convert dates to seconds. Let's look that up. Dates. Let's do date to time in date to seconds in JavaScript. Converting a date into seconds. Get time function will get the date in milliseconds, not seconds. Okay, well that's fun. So let's have a look at this ourselves. I'm going to go back to my little playground and go let a date is equal to a new date, and see what happens when I use get time. Okay, so I get a bunch of seconds. Let's have a look at what actually that does. So let's look up get time JavaScript. I'm going to look at the MDN docs. So the developer.mozilla is your best resource for understanding what things do. The get time method returns the number of milliseconds since the Unix epoch. All right. Anyone know when the Unix epoch is or was?
70s, right?
70.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Yeah. January 1st, 1970, I think. Yeah, January the 1st, 1970. Arbitrary date. It's just a point in time where we will measure things by. Okay, so this gets me in milliseconds, a unit of measurement. So if I want to add number of seconds, I just call it times that by 1,000, right? So if I do let's start is the date, we ask it to convert it into milliseconds, and then I guess I should put that below this line. Add a gigaseconds, then we'll do start plus what was it? 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then milliseconds of seconds is 1, 2, 3. And then I need to add a gigasecond and convert it back to a date. So I do return, well, let's just keep it as a variable for that. Let end is equal to new date. Start plus a very huge long number, and I need to return it.
Oh, gigasecond is not a fraction of a second. Okay, it's like it's 10 to the power of 9 seconds. Okay, all right.
So again.
So sorry, I thought I made a mistake. I thought gigasecond is less than a second. No, it's 10 to the power of 9 seconds. Sorry,
Yeah, no worries. I think I was confusing as well, so don't worry. Milliseconds and seconds conversions. Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah, milliseconds. We need to multiply it. Yeah. No, you're making me second guess.
No, I think you're right. Giga is 10 to the power of 9.
I think I'm right too, and I think Zach gave me a thumbs up as well, so I trust his opinion. No, I'm joking. Okay, cool. So
if the original's in milliseconds, would you not have to take 1,000 off rather than add another 1,000?
Say that again.
If the original date is in milliseconds,
yeah,
and you want 10 to the power 9 added to that, but to get milliseconds in seconds, would you not have to divide the 1,000 off? I've just got a bit of a block there.
I think it's the other way around, because this is in milliseconds. So I need to add like to like, right? So
So yeah.
Yeah, I need to add
Yeah,
milliseconds.
that makes
I need
sense,
to convert
I
this
thought you were
second
trying
into
to.
milliseconds, which is like time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Day 3 phase is fine. Cool. So let's run that and see. So now I have like a simple program that I feel like it probably works. There might be some bugs. Let's run our test and see where we're at.
Does JavaScript have a simpler notation like 10E, 9 or 12 or something like that? Or we need to put like all those number of zeros?
Yeah, great question. You can look it up in a second, all right? You can just refer to it in maths, right? So you can just do 10 times 10 to the power of 9 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so I ran npm test. I have a passing test, which is great, but I also have 5 not passing tests, right? Those skipped. So yeah, I can tell it here because it says skipped before the name of the test. But I passed that first test, which is awesome. Nice job, folks. Good teamwork. And in order to make the rest of them unskipped, I can just go here and remove the X's. And I will probably, you should always just do one by one. Let's just unskip one test and run it again. Cool, both tests are passing. Let's try another one. 3 tests are passing. So far, so good, folks. Look at this. So dramatic. 4 tests and 5. And the last one. Boom, cool. 6 tests, 6 passed. We're good to go to finish this. You might want to try and like refactor this, maybe reorganize it if you want to. As Ritik was saying, this return, this variable feels a bit useless. So I might just go straight here with the return instead. And we might find a way to simplify this, but up to you. Don't spend too long on it. And once you're done, let's go back to the instructions. What does it say we have to do? Once test passing, we can change that. We already did this. We enable the next one just by removing that X and submit the solution. Once your solution ready, you can submit it using exercise submit and then the file name. Interesting. Can I still do it from this project directory? Let's try. Cool. All right. Exorcism, submit gigasecond. Your solution has been submitted successfully. View it at, and then let's go to here. Let's have a look. Guess I could just refresh, but let's have a look. Cool. So this is my solution, and well done on solving it. Cool. So mark it as complete. You can, if you want to, request feedback, but I would just go straight on to the next exercise, all right? So let's do that. Well done. Publish my solution. Whatever, fine. not it's irrelevant, but fine. And then choose next, and we go on to the next one. Boom. Okay, thoughts and questions about just making sure that we feel comfortable, not necessarily with the solving part of it, because that will probably take most of your time, but just the process of making sure you install Exorcism and install JavaScript and have the things that we're looking at to know what to do.
Yeah, so we just change the source code of
Correct.
the file, and then the test automatically just imports it.
Exactly.
And then,
up here at the top of your test file, imports from that file. So you can see it finds your source code here. And the export statement on the left exposes this function. And that's the function here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the only thing you really need to do is decide what arguments it needs. And you can look at here by, when it calls a function, the test, how many arguments does it you need, figure it out and make sure you understand what the return value is and then the steps in between. All right, inputs and outputs, make sure you're clear on that from the tests. and like the instructions, and then the steps. You shouldn't need to change anything else. Good question. Any other thoughts or questions for the moment? I'm sure things might come up when you're actually doing it, which I fully expect. But anything else at the moment?
Cool. Nothing at the minute.
Cool. Okay, so now until lunch, have a go, set this up yourself, install JavaScript, install Exotism, and do a couple of easy ones. Maybe just the goal for this morning is do maybe specifically this one, because this might be the most straightforward one just to have a look at. And as you're doing it, all the things that are popping up that you're unfamiliar with, like what is a const, how to write a function in JavaScript, note down on your learning board or go tackle them immediately. But at some point, just keep a log of all the things that you're experiencing that you want to come back to or learn more about. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. So up until lunchtime, break for lunch, and then the rest of this day looks like gather back in our peer groups. We'll see how this morning has gone. We'll talk about some things if needed, and then at the end of the day, we're going to come back together as a cohort at 5 o'clock, and we're going to do our first phase of thinking about how we want to work together. So we're going to try and form a cohort charter. We'll do this a couple times this week and next week. And just some expectations for each other. So that's what this day is going to look like. In the morning and the afternoon is individually in the morning, afternoon in pairs. If you want to get in pairs right now, the pairs are out, so you can go find your pair partner and chat to them if you want. Any questions? Cool. I'll be on Discord. If you need me, just ping me. The Zoom closes every 40 minutes of inactivity, so I'll probably just log myself off Zoom, but ping me if you need any help, all right?
All right.
Cool. Enjoy your morning. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.